Welcome, everybody. This is episode 3 of Helios Horizons. I'm very happy to be joined by MultiversX core developer Robert Sasu. Robert, how are you doing?
Hi, thank you. It's been a long day and it's 10 o'clock here, but I am quite happy. And we had another amazing day in the team. We managed to move some things further ahead, so that's pretty great.
Well, let's jump right into that conversation. When the Elrond team got together, about like 8 years ago, maybe 4 years was the launch. The first idea, I think, was like 2017 or so. They came together to fix what was wrong in the blockchain space. There was the blockchain trilemma that was set out to be fixed. And when Elrond launched, which is now MultiversX, a lot of these things were really in place that set it apart from other blockchains. And I want to talk to one of the architects of that today with you, Robert. So take us back to these like first moments, like when you guys were starting out. What was sort of the problems that you saw in the space, and how did you go about fixing them, and how did you address them, and with what purpose?
So, actually, I've met Bitcoin back in 2011, 2012, really early on, and already kept a few presentations about it. But I did not take time at all to develop anything because, from my perspective, as a developer and somebody who likes hardcore optimizations, there was nothing to do on Bitcoin other than trading, or rather than keeping it a store of value. You can't really build stuff on that. Then I went into AI and then got back into the space with the MultiversX team, because they actually had a vision how to scale the blockchain from every step. And this was some of the big differences early on, that it was not just about optimizing one single thing in the stack, but to rewrite everything. Back then, in the days like 2018, people were copy pasting mostly Ethereum code or Cosmos code, and then adding one or two new modules on top of it, and that was it. Or they came up with complicated solutions which did not really work. And even if there were no fancy words in how Elrond's architecture, Multiverse's architecture was designed, and we did not came up with new names for our consensus algorithms or stuff like that, we were hardcore developers and engineers who actually resolved problems what others couldn't resolve. And then the first, we wanted to resolve the blockchain trilemma, which was security, decentralization, and scalability cannot exist. All three, choose two of them. And we demonstrated that it's possible. People still, even after these many years, still don't believe that so many transactions per second can be processed with low-end machines, but we demonstrated that a few times, that 10,000 transactions, 30,000 transactions per second can simply happen with a well-designed architecture. And we have innovated a lot, from peer-to-peer to storage, to how the tree actually looks like, how one transaction is processed, the whole process of a transaction. We innovated in a lot of components there, and all those innovation added together in order to resolve the problems. And still, we are still the one and only chain with sharding, like with complete architecture around sharding, everything resolved. And then from that basic architecture, which was not basic, but let's say the base architecture of having a sharded chain with meta chain and a few shards who execute the transactions, and the meta is the coordination layer. We had to resolve fork issues, we had to resolve consensus issues. All of those were resolved, and we reached to this kind of ecosystem and foundational layer, which simply works. But we never stopped at simply working. We always added new and new things as the development went on. So right now you have 3 shards in the meta chain. The meta chain coordinates only shard headers, which have really limited amount of data, only a few hashes and some signatures. And then all the processing is done on the shard levels. Back around 4 years ago, before the mainnet launch, we had an example where we run with the public testnet with over 1,000 nodes from the community running on 50 shards. We achieved 250,000 of TPS, all running on low-end machines. No more. I think it might be fun to redo that test, but let's see when we have time to do that.
I agree. I think now it would be very interesting, especially with the lower finalization and all of that coming very soon. I think one of the things that I wanted to also ask about in this outset, this idea of MultiversX or Elrond at the time, the thing that struck me with the Elrond white paper when I read it, while I was reading all the others as well, was it seemed to really have this user focus that was more or less absent, or at least a secondary thought in other white papers. Can you speak more about that, and maybe also how this low-end machine ties in there? Because I think that's an interesting point. Like, all of us can basically run a validator node. Thanks to the low technical requirements. So how did you guys think about that particular aspect, this sort of thinking about the end user, thinking about how the network runs, but also how it's used and how that can be used to onboard the next billion?
There are different things here. I think it was always the vision of Satoshi and all the guys who first started building blockchains and crypto, some of the OGs, that it's not only your keys and your funds, but you validate at home on your own machine. And this has super nice implications and super big implications for security and actually security against network state attacks and against censorship. And actually when you are able to run the whole system at home. You do not have to rely on a third party to give you the truth, because you have the truth on your chain. Some of these things have been forgotten with this L2 craze in Ethereum or the BitVM or other such things. They forgot the thing that at any time a state can come and say, okay, this kind of software you are not allowed to run. And if your sequencer or your company developing that sequencer runs in that state, what will actually happen to all those users? All those users will have to use the exit trees on L1s to get out their funds. What about the people who have only $50 in an L2? It will cost more the gas on Ethereum than getting out. So I think that blockchain and really building beautiful architectures around blockchain. It's possible, but we have to keep in mind all these primitives and to build on top of these primitives. If we delete these primitives, if we delete the primitives of making it possible to run at home, if we delete the primitives of composability, if we delete from the language censorship resistance and these kinds of things, then how are we different from a centralized database running on Amazon? Like, actually, where is the disruptive trend of the technology? I think these are one of those core things, core principles we have to keep. So that's why we always said you have to run on your own laptop the whole chain, and we have to optimize for that. We saw a lot of other architectures going in other directions, but we said, okay, it's much better to do it like this, because blockchain is not about the big players. Blockchain is about everybody, like the whole community and every user out there. And let's say this is one of the first things, that you can run everything at home. You can see that, or even in the cloud, with all the cloud providers, they have like amazingly good prices compared to anything else out there. I think it is almost the cheapest to run a MultiversX node. And then starting from there, we never stopped at only building the blockchain and outsourcing everything else to others, because we saw a lot of problems in the ecosystem. And back at the time, we actually went and asked about some of wallet teams or DeFi teams or other people to come and build on top of us. But actually, there was not so much innovation they wanted to do. They wanted only to copy paste what they have. They didn't really necessarily care about what kind of new primitives we have. So we started to build ourselves. It was cheaper, because working from Eastern Europe, it's much cheaper than working from US. And we actually could innovate. And right now you see all these wonderful apps on the ecosystem, which are right here, with community created, with a lot of innovations, with beautiful interfaces. Such things you don't really see in the crypto space. And we should be really, let's say, proud of everybody from the ecosystem, how much innovation have went into and how much they fought in order to create awesome applications. And I think this is another differentiator, that you never stop innovating and that you look forward in order to resolve all the problems. And I always say that one of the huge differences with how the MultiversX team and how the MultiversX development works is that whenever there is a project and the project comes to us and says, I would need this kind of opcodes, this kind of processing, because it would resolve this, that, and that, we are open to debate it and then implement it. That's how ESDT v2 have arisen, or that's how big floats were implemented, or other stuff. You don't really see this kind of openness in other chains. We have, let's say, the capacity to build these kind of things. We have the architecture, the whole code, it's built on modules and interfaces. So it is quite straightforward to add new things. It's not like one mess added together. And then at one point, it became easier and easier to add new things. and we can still do that. I think that's
Yeah.
a big differentiator.
I want to zoom in on this debate on primitives, and also this kind of adaptability and taking on these this feedback and then building things that are needed. Because I mean, obviously we're all out there seeing like the scams and the drains and all of these things that keep happening, and a lot of the remedies that are proposed on a regular basis in this space are like, okay, well, set up more hot wallets, set up more cold wallets, set up more this, set up more that, rather than actually fixing the issue. Can you talk a little bit about this sort of the importance of primitives, and then also what kind of primitives you thought were important that still differentiate MultiversX from other chains?
So I think that we have kept the promise of blockchain and all the primitives blockchain is coming: decentralization, scalability, security, censorship resistance, interoperability, then composability. All those things and trust and authenticity are already on the chain, and everybody who builds on top of the chain is inheriting this kind of things. So this is like the base. And then we very early on we have discovered how hard it is for people to differentiate between what is a scam and what is not. You know, actually when the mainnet was launched, we put up a support team in order for them to help people, because we were actually onboarding a lot of non-crypto native people from Eastern Europe or Europe. And then we put up a call center, let's call it a support team, who were there day and night resolving problems. And then we just saw the abundance of how people are putting their seed phrases in stupid web pages. And then we figured it out, okay, this cannot go on. And then we implemented the Guardians feature, because from an engineering point of view, that's the best way to do it. Like the best way to do it is it's on the foundational layer. That's why people have changed from HTTP to HTTPS. The whole foundational communication layer of HTTPS, it's secured and it works on an other type of security than HTTP. Or that's why people have moved on from Flash, because through Flash, every single computer could be affected by tens of thousands of viruses and keyloggers and everything around them. It was a mess, that kind of language. With the ESDT tokens, it was somewhat the other way around. We had to create the native assets because of sharding. And let's say that was the kicker, that we have to do it. Then by doing the native assets, we have discovered, wow, these are like, why haven't anybody talked about this? Like transfer and execute instead of approve and transfer from. But even when like designing the native assets, we thought it is so stupid to have approve and transfer from. That's like every scammer loves it, or increase of allowance or stuff like that. And then people actually would need like a computer science degree in order to see what's a scam and what's not. And the thing is that a lot of OGs or a lot of projects who've been living in this bubble of the crypto world, where they made their chance in one of the bull markets, and they've been, let's say, developing, and all their friends are crypto people or crypto native people, and they look around and only speak about all those. They do not see the problems of the users. They do not see the problems of the newcomers. And actually, they don't care about it. Like, it was a video around 2 months ago or 3 months ago about like layer 2s with Vitalik Buterin. And Vitalik said that the user interface of Ethereum is great. And all the L2s were saying that user interface of Ethereum is not great. Yeah, the user interfaces of Ethereum is much greater than how it looked in 2016, but it's not great. So that's one of the the problems, that when people get used to something, they say that it's okay. But when you are thinking in a startup environment, when you are thinking about like all these new technical things coming in, you cannot say or cannot remain the same. You have to evolve. You have to create more. You have to debate yourself over and over again in order to create better and better products, because that's how we can fight somewhat entropy and move things forward. And then that's what's another big differentiator. And yes, some other types of execution models came up, like the SUI with Move and UTXOs, and Solana with like their own set of factory contracts. But they somehow resolved only a part of the issue. We went deep and we thought like from ground up, from the primitives, that how to build these kind of things like really well. And I think the multi-transfer and with the ESDTs resolves all the issues about wallet drains, plus the guardians actually protect the users. And since it's implemented, there are actually no wallet drains, and there are actually no reports of all these kinds of things. And we are the only ones to have this kind of security. And it's quite, I've read DB Crypto, where he was speaking about security, user security, in one of the Twitter spaces, and I got the same feeling over and over again. And I got the feeling over and over again in Denver and in Dubai as well. The builders, some of them, or the OG builders, let's say, they are in their own bubble and they cannot see outside of it. And then they say that, okay, it's the user fault. But I would say that you have to step down from your high horses, because not everybody went through a science degree, a computer science degree, and learned the hard way and all the way what is a scam and what is not. And people who actually do not use computers so much, they do not know what Twitter is. They do not know. Actually, they might not even have a web browser installed on their phone, because everything is Facebook or stuff like that. You cannot educate billions of people. That's an impossibility, especially when like there is a system so like a heaven for scammers and a nightmare for developers with the reentrancy attacks as well. I don't know how much of you guys have seen, but in Facebook, Instagram, there is right now, it's a video going around. It's not necessarily related right now with blockchain, but it's a video going around as how Dubai was covered with snow. Yeah, it's actually a fake video. It's an artificial intelligence. But you would be amazed how many people from over 40 years of age or 50 years of age think that that is the reality, because they cannot fathom the power of AI. How can you educate such a people? And there are like billions of people like this in the world. No, you can't do that. You have to build a better software solution for them. And that's what engineers can do. It might not be as sexy as launching a new DeFi on an EVM chain or a copy paste of another ETH L2, but that's what engineers have to do. That's how you can move this kind of space forward, the crypto space. And I still believe this is of utmost importance to have user security, because if you don't have user security, the mass adoption will not come. That's a fact. I had to speak about, like, I shared a story about a guy who lost. He lost 250 euros, yeah, but it was his monthly salary because he's not working 8 hours per day. And I had, so even in the Coinbase wallet, that USDT was, at the first glance, it looked like it was real. It looked like there were over 20k USD as value. That's how in Coinbase wallet it was shown. And I had to dig in, and I have an understanding of what blockchain means and what things can be done in order to figure out what is happening there. And there are scammers, and they were sending him mails that he has to prepay 10% of tax before he can retrieve it. So he would have paid $2,000 more in order to be scammed. And that kind of wallet was not showing the user that he had problems. I think this is wrong, and I think people have to fix this. And nobody wants to fix it, but yeah, okay. We as MultiversX, we are differentiators, and we build things which matters and are good. So I am quite happy about this. Like actually resolving these problems for users, I'm quite happy about it, and I see that this will be great. It might be not as sexy as some meme coins on Solana sometimes, but actually it will lead to organic growth and more coming in and not leaving because they were scammed.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's so interesting also, this Dubai experience. I want to ask you about that. When you're there and you talk to these other chains and the developers on them and the people who lead them, what is the general feeling about where the space was when you launched versus where it's now? Is there a greater understanding of what users need, or is it still very much catering to the same people and not thinking about all the stuff that you just mentioned about the endpoint users and the people that we actually want to get into the space and benefit from everything it has to offer?
People did not really care about the user security. They cared about our sovereign chain technology and the TPS around it, and the VM, and how Ethereum links to other, and interoperability. So I spoke about that, and I spoke how easy it is for developers to build applications on Rust, or as I saw in this week that Quentin have made that kind of Swift smart contract. That was great. So I could speak about that as well. But this is the crypto board. I can think that we can go much further than this and build applications what really matter and what resolve issues in the world. And I don't necessarily think that crypto should be about like looking for the next sexy thing which is in the crypto space, but to actually go out there and resolve problems for users, because that's how you get massive adoption. After you can make Ponzi schemes if you want for billions of people, but this was like a joke. But I think that the blockchain has to a little bit, developers have to move on from this kind of, okay, everything is financial and everything is about tokens or points or stuff like that, and to actually create apps which will bring billions of users. And the foundation is here, like the code as the foundation, and the base layer is here. You can deploy anything you want as you want. It scales, but you need to go, but you need to, let's say, go further on resolving problems. And I know that even the startup world has changed how funding is received in the general startup world right now, because of how AI destroyed and incentives destroyed that kind of environment as well. But let's bring some golden age of good application development on top of the blockchain, led by MultiversX. I think this is a nice slogan.
Very nice. I'll remind everyone, we are joined here by Robert Sasu, core developer of MultiversX. This is episode 3 of Helios Horizons. We're going to give away some e-gold, the digital gold that you need, sendable anywhere, anytime to anyone in the world. That's the promise of the decentralized crypto system. Just retweet the pinned tweet and you'll be entered. Robert, I want to talk a little bit about this. You mentioned this evolvement and the onboarding the next billion. What was this sort of path that you guys saw where you felt that Elrond needed to become MultiversX? Let's talk about these different sort of verticals that you are targeting now and how that's different from, let's say, the initial vision, or maybe it's been unchanged.
No, the initial vision have grown, let's say. At first, we wanted to resolve only the trilemma, the blockchain trilemma, but after that, it became quite obvious that we can innovate so much more, and then we can create so much more, that it is time to evolve our vision. And then that's why, like, the name came, multiverse to the power of X. It's about multiple worlds, multiple industries, and everything is benefiting from the same trust layer, from the same layer of authenticity, which can scale forever. So that was behind the name change, and it's actually much more, let's say, much more clearer, or much more explainable to people. All those people who don't know what Elrond is, it's like it's only a name. But with multiverse to the power of X, it's actually you have some sort of explanation behind. And in terms of narratives, there are all those great narratives from the crypto space, from DeFi to NFTs to gamings to payments. But I would say that developers can find and build like actually everything they want. We are like a completely general chain where you can deploy any application. You have the WASM, which is heavily developed by Mozilla, Google, Facebook. Then you can use any sort of language to develop your apps. I think that one of the we want to create a new SDK for app developers where everything is abstracted away from the user, like an account abstraction with passkeys from your phone using another cryptographic primitive, the SECP256R1. Then when you have the passkeys, you have an account abstraction with which verifies these kind of passkeys. Then you have a relayer, the relayer service, with a subscription or with Paymaster. Then you can imagine that you can offer apps for users which are exactly the same as in Web 2. They don't even have to know anything about it. They just download the app and they say, okay, I have to pay $1 subscription per month. Then everything is handled from the relayer side and stuff around that. People can imagine things like, okay, for the first part, until the user is in, let's say, in the free mode, transactions are not necessarily written to the blockchain, but they are kept and signed and put it in a database. And then from there, when the user starts to pay and the user wants to use the blockchain, he will pay for a subscription and then use the blockchain primitives directly. Like you can imagine having freemium games like that. You play for free, whatever, everything. Then when you want to start to use new primitives and new premium features, or you want to list your received NFT into a marketplace, then you will start using that. But actually without the need of seed phrases and stuff around that. I think that having this kind of, like, all I explained like this, it's possible right now. You can do it. And then I think that we might see several versions of it from several developers. Why not? I think it's like a cool project to have in several languages, because you have Swift developers or JavaScript developers or Rust developers. And then when you have this kind of SDK, you can go to universities, to hackathons, to Web2 places, to wherever, and say that, okay, this is how you can build an app. This is the SDK. You can start from here. And then look, these are the primitives. You can directly tap into it from the blockchain space without any hassle. And the user will have full security. The user doesn't have to give out authorization calls like on Ethereum it would have with their account abstraction. Sorry about Ethereum. I have to say it out loud that your ideas about out call or ERC-4337 on top of the ERC tokens are wrong, and they will lead to even more wallet drains. And then you have to make a better design in order to resolve those. But yeah, we will try to even innovate even the Ethereum virtual machine with our sovereign chains. But that's another story. But yeah.
But let's talk about that and for a second, the future development, because I think that's super interesting. How you guys think about the future and what apps are needed and how to get people in. You mentioned the sovereign chains a few times. Let's give us a quick overview of what that is, and then also what other things you have planned or in the pipeline, and how you think that is going to push this space forward.
So it's a bigger switch, the sovereign chains, from what we've discussed since till now, because with sovereign chains, you can use all our innovations and all we have built into the MultiversX ecosystem and launch your own blockchain. You can launch this with Gravity restaking or without, and you can actually use the Gravity restaking with sovereign chains, but you can reuse Gravity restaking layer with other binaries as well. So those are two different things, but can be combined together. The sovereign chains, as I said, will get all the innovations I've previously discussed about, but running your own chain, it's much more complicated than deploying your application on top of an existing L1. So running on your own chain has to be for application-specific, more complex things, where you need different type of economics, or you need a different type of VM, or you want to run it in a private environment as an as an industry leader or as a corporation or as a public service. So, and so on top of all those 30 plus things, which is from the MultiversX innovation, you will get multi-VM support as well. And that's, I think, it's another killer feature, because you can actually atomically compose one of those words which were lost by the Ethereum developers, but you can actually atomically compose applications from multiple VMs. Yeah, all built with the space VM or under the space VM. But the space VM can be talked about like two layers. One is the coordination layer and the coordination and communication layer with the blockchain, and the other one is the actual executor. So building the EVM executor with the Buildly team, actually the Buildly team built it. I just had to be in some sort of calls in which I discussed about architecture and unblocked some of the development points. That was it. And it was built only in a couple of weeks. And I think it's actually faster. Not I think, it's actually faster than the real EVM. And what you can do, how you can improve, let's say, EVM, is that you make all the calls from Space VM, and then ESDT, Space VM, and the Guardians are protect you for all the interactions with the apps on the EVM side. So you do not even have, you don't have to give approve calls. Actually, you need, but one such example is that, or let's say you have the Guardian by default. So every transaction has to be double signed with the Guardian, which is great. Then you don't actually have approval, because you can do a multi-call from the Space VM, which does approve, execute, and revoke. And for multiple tokens at the same time. So right now, for example, on Ethereum, when you want to add liquidity to a smart contract, you have to do 2 approvals and an execution, because you have to approve the Uniswap contract to take your USDC and wrapped it, and in order to execute something, you allow them to take out those money from your pocket, not from your pocket, from the third-party deposit box, because that's how ERC contracts are. Then you can actually streamline all this process in one transaction through the Space VM, so improving all the UX of Ethereum. It will be still slower than running on Space VM and WASM, but if people want to go in that direction, it will be a possibility. And then you can launch and tap into the liquidity of Ethereum, and by bringing that kind of sovereign chain to be, for example, an L2 over Ethereum as well, with actually resolving some of the most concerning user security issues, and plus being much more faster and cheaper. So that's possible. And other than this, the sovereign chains will enable all sorts of interoperabilities with other chains, which we are planning to work together, such as Torchain, such as Polygon, and maybe as if the demand grows and there is a need, even Solana or Solana VM, and then I think Near looks good as well. And as they have like WASM at base, it will be pretty easy to do that. Then, the Cosmos IBC ecosystem through the COSM WASM, it's again a pretty simple thing to do to have IBC there. I'm speaking like simple as not, it will not take years to do it, but it will take months. And then you will have through the sovereign chains, you can offer seamless experiences between ecosystems and make everybody, let's say, happy. I still believe that the best to develop its own space VM because it has the most opcodes and the most support for developers to build. And then it is secure, no reentrances, and the spacecraft SDK, it's like, I think it's getting just awesome. I recently tried out a few other dev ecosystems from Solana to Move because those were, let's say, the more Outlook-like than Fuel was. Again, one more. And I think that with the new additions of unified syntax and interactors and all the things going on unit and integration testing and proxies and smart contract to smart contract calls, developing on spacecraft SDK, it's the easiest one. And we have read this one from other builders who have went into the path of developing on Ethereum or on Solana than developing on our case.
Yeah, it's very interesting how you still kind of stand out, and I think you've made some very extensive lists that were fun to read and very impressive. I want to take some time, if there are any questions in the audience, feel free to request the mic now or write a comment so I can pass it on to Robert. Robert, on that last note, I want to say, like, Elrond probably stood out as being the first blockchain that convincingly solved this blockchain trilemma. How would you say MultiversX stands out from the rest? Feel free to provide a 25-point list or just give a quick explanation.
No, I think I wrote a few times the 25-point list, but we stand out from user security, and we stand out from how easy it is to build and how wonderful applications can be built without a hassle, and like users will feel familiar with their Web2 apps, and then developers will feel familiar with all their development outside of the crypto world. I believe, as I mentioned today, that there will be a flippening, and I think it will happen pretty soon in sense of number of Rust smart contract developers versus Solidity smart contract developers. It's just, I think, 1 or 2 years at most when this kind of the number of developers will completely, it will be much higher on Rust than on Solidity. Rust is the most loved language, and it's quite easy to develop on it, especially when you have a DLT on top of it. And I think it will be quite hard for Ethereum to actually compete with Rust, as the number of people developing Rust and the number of entities who are eager to develop Rust are just much higher. All the big companies are developing Rust and stuff around that.
For sure. I don't see any requests at the moment or intelligent questions in the chat, but that might change. Feel free to still comment. Feel free to repost the pinned tweet for a chance to win electronic gold. Robert, if I am a developer and I want to start building on MultiversX today, where do I start?
Right now, you can go to the docs and then docs.multiversx.com, and then you can have to start with the 50-minute DApp, or you can try to build the crypto zombies via our partners. There is another 15-minute DApp there. That's one of the things you can start. Then you can explore all the tools people have created for the builders directly from the multiversx.com page. Those would be some of the things to do. And then even right now on the main page of MultiversX, there is a tab Builders, where you can actually start to discover MultiversX, learn how it works, go into the docs, and start building your first app, and actually join a hackathon. I think when there are like hackathons, joining that, and when you have a prize there, seeing that you can get something, it really motivates the people. So and it actually makes people to learn.
Have you announced the dates yet for the hackathons this year? I got some alpha yesterday, but I'm not sure if it's public yet.
There was a hackathon in Bucharest already. Then there will be on the first week of May, there will be one in Budapest. So going to Hungary. One will be in the middle of summer. Then the big one for X Day. Those are for sure. We might create other hackathons for other universities as well, where we are partners, because I think creating hackathons for students actually make them learn more, and then they will create a lot of things.
Amazing. I did get a question. I hope I understand it correctly, but this is something I actually wanted to touch on, but probably wouldn't have time to go into depth here. But let's talk a little bit. The governance question came up. We just had this vote on the new staking V4. Is that something that you guys also think of as a way that it could work for nation states in a sense? That's the question. The question is governance of MultiversX as proof of concept for governance of nation states? Question mark.
So for nation states, I think they would need to do some kind of KYC before, and there would be some kind of regulations. But yeah, they can use the same kind of smart contracts and the same kind of process, where you can vote and then have all the results live and getting around it. This kind of governance, it's like more like a referendum, because you have something which, let's say, would be clear, and you want to activate something clear. That's why we choose to do governances when, let's say, the code is ready or is in his last phase. If we made, let's say, a mistake of evaluating some stuff, then let's say it's on us that some of the things were not activated because of that, because the vote didn't get through. It happened on Cosmos with the V2 that was actually vetoed out. But I think that having a vote directly on the final version, like, you would vote on the referendum, but on the final proposition of how a new law would be written, I think it's better for the people, or it's just make much more sense. You can have initial discussions about the idea, but the final vote should be like on the real deal. we have like stories here in Romania where we actually have voted like over 10 years ago that the parliament shouldn't have more than 300 people, and it was never implemented. And it was a referendum where over 50% of the people gone out and voted. But it was just a question, would you like to have at maximum 300 people in the parliament? Everybody voted yes, never was implemented. But if you would have something like the law is written, and would you like this law to be activated as it is stated here on the day of whatever, that would be like much better for a referendum. And that's what we wanted to try with the governance.
Yeah, very interesting. Also, this sort of direct democracy concept. Pleased to welcome Arno to the stage. We had an interesting discussion earlier today about onboarding enterprises to MVX. Wondering if the question will be related or not, but hi, Arno. Feel free to ask.
Hi, Lucas. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to ask the question. Good evening, Robert. And yes, the question is going to be related. This morning, Robert, we had a very interesting roundtable with Lucas, Joe Wu, Brad Racy, and some other guys, and we came down to the same conclusion as, we've been listening to you tonight, and it's very frustrating because MultiversX has an amazing technology foundation, both for builders and for users. And we feel like, it's not being recognized as it should. And when it comes down to businesses, bringing more builders, bringing more businesses, when you compete in the same space as some other blockchains, like Near, Solana, and MultiversX is in competition, direct competition with those ecosystems, you feel like you don't have the same means, the same resources. And so we were wondering, the world is what it is, and sometimes, sadly, the best product doesn't win. It's not the product that gets adopted in the end. And I'm sure that everybody here, we don't want that. And so we were wondering this morning, why isn't MultiversX raising around a series of money that it could, because the way it generates revenue today, the user base, the growth, it could most likely raise a lot of money that could be used to fuel the ecosystem growth and bring in some champions. I know you're not fond of that because you would prefer people to come organically, but sadly, when you're competing in the US markets, you have deep pockets that are funding ecosystems, and they're fueling those ecosystems by incentivizing builders. So yeah, that's my question. Why is not MultiversX playing the same game as the others in that sense?
I think one of the answers is that we have raised 5 million versus others raising hundreds of millions. So you cannot be in the same boat because you don't have that kind of money to pour.
Yeah, but why don't you raise 150 million, 200 million? Because the way the company is today, it could raise that sort of money. Sure, it could.
I have no answer it, as I'm not directly involved in things like raising. I'm much more for the developers, but yeah, that's actually a pretty good idea. But I would say two things. Raising money, it's okay. It can create incentives for builders. But one of the jobs, the hard jobs, will still remain to find those builders who will really go out and build the stuff Like they don't only come with the name, but they are, let's say, as resilient as some of the people here I see in this space who are actually innovating and actually finding and creating new products, not just, let's say, copy pasting or bringing their existing product from another ecosystem. I don't think that let's say paying a couple of $1 million for a team which have built an application on another chain to bring it to the MultiversX, it's a good thing just for the name. I think if they bring some application, then they should innovate on top of it to make it much better than it exists on the, let's say, on the base chain, because they can do it through the MultiversX innovations, and then it makes sense. So, but I think that even if right now there is not so much amount of money like directly stated that there is like, I don't know, $100 million of developer funds right now. Still, if there are insane developers who create in super great applications, the VCs and the foundation and everybody will still fund them and make the things happen. I still believe in this.
Yeah.
Arno.
Can I continue?
Yeah.
I don't want to keep Robert too long. I also have another question, and I think this is a great space also in the Agora. I think this is also a very nice, perhaps separate conversation. But I got one more Agora thing, and maybe we can pin the link here as well, which is the sovereign chains. Everybody seems pretty excited about it. There's a bunch of discussions happening on Agora. Is there going to be another governance decision on economics or the implementation of that as well?
I haven't thought about that yet, about creating a governance for the gravity layer, for the restaking, because the restaking can have its own life and actually be somewhat a separated business, and would mean a lot more freedom for that and to move forward. We have to see, but most probably for some of the features which shared security enables in terms of the transfer and execute by user opcode, most probably there will be like, okay, let's have a vote that this address and this address will get whitelist for that opcode, because it's actually about users and it's actually about how the chains are connected and what kind of assumptions we make on those chains. So on that sense, definitely yes. The sovereign chain SDK, it's built, it's open source, so as it exists. But for every new improvement we make and new code change we make, we will create and complete governance and voting for that, in which we explain each of the features, what it brings, and what are the changes.
Great. Thank you so much for being here, Robert. Thank you all for tuning in. This was episode 3. I'll leave you with one last question, request for a short-ish answer. What are you most excited about for the future of MultiversX?
I'm excited about bringing billions of users through awesome user interfaces.
Brilliant.
I think that
Thank you so much.
We shouldn't forget that one of the killer features of blockchain is payments. So payments shouldn't be forgotten. And here in Europe, we have a good chance for that to happen on a broader sense, like on a really, really broad sense. Pretty excited about that as well.
Amazing. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We can continue the conversations on the Agora. Robert is obviously quite active on Twitter, and the team is very responsive on some channels now there. So, go engage in the conversations, bring your ideas, because they're actually heard. And some of them are implemented if they're good enough. So thank you so much, Robert. Thanks for all the work you do. Thank you, everybody, for listening. This was episode 3 of Helios Horizons. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.